Welcome to the Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason.
The Skeptic Zone coming to you from Sydney, Australia. Hello, this is Richard Saunders with you once again. Coming up on this week's show, Dr. Alice Howarth, all the way from Liverpool, will chat to us. Now, she is one of the co-hosts of Skeptics with a K, a fabulous podcast I've been listening to for years. Skeptics with a K. Dr. Alice is coming to Australia to take part in Skepticon. She's going to tell us all about that and some of her research into cancer, specifically cancer and biology. A fascinating woman indeed, coming up at the top of the show. Following that, detox, my foot, or foot detox. This has been prompted by a poster I saw in a window of a massage parlour. And you've probably seen these devices yourself, or at least advertising. This is where you put your foot into a foot bath, so to speak, and it's supposedly detoxes your body. Does it? My foot. After that, Maynard spooky action. Maynard heads once again to Sydney Skeptics in the pub and asks pub goers what they think about so-called psychics and clairvoyants doing shows at RSL Clubs, or clubs here in Australia dedicated to returned servicemen and women, veterans of conflicts. And these clubs are really set up to honour the dead, and yet they have shows with these so-called psychics and paranormal people pretending or thinking they can contact the dead. What do pub goers think about that? And also Maynard chats to a couple of new listeners. After then, we catch up with Claire Klingenberg from the Czech Republic, who was recently in Scotland and Germany, and when she was in Germany, she helped to test some paranormal claims. Wow, that is so interesting. Now, in this interview, you'll hear me say that there is a video of the tests in German, which there is, of course, and link in the show notes, but I've just discovered, just before putting this show out, that the Deutsche Welle have translated the clip into English. Both links will be on this week's show notes, so if you want to watch that in German, and you understand German, go for it, or English. Then to round off the show, Maynard and I report on the recent Australian Skeptics blood drive here in Sydney. And I'm happy to report about a week or so after I donated some blood, I got a message from the blood service telling me that my blood had been used to save lives already. And that gives one a very nice feeling. More messages and updates from me at the end of the show. But now it's time for me to run downstairs, being careful not to trip over those cats, and maybe make myself up a serving of fish and chips. And through the magic of editing, come back and bring you the rest of The Skeptic Zone. And joining me now, all the way from Liverpool, it's Dr. Alice Howarth. Hello.
Hi, Richard.
Hi, wow, wonderful to chat to a fellow podcaster all the way on the other side of the world. And before we get stuck into all the other details, before we get started on all the other information, what's it like for you now? You've been with Skeptics with a K for quite a while, I think.
It has been. It's been a good few years now. I think just over 3 years now. Hit the halfway point. We're now more episodes with me than with the original starting host, Colin. So,
wow,
it's been a while.
That's fantastic. And I imagine, like the rest of us doing podcasts, you find it mostly fun.
Mostly fun. Well, I'm very lucky that I don't have to do very much of the editing, so it's great fun for me. I just have to write a story and record one every couple of weeks. So it's very lucky not to have to deal with editing issues.
Right. Oh, well, there you go. That makes it a lot more fun, I think, for you.
Makes it a lot more fun.
Although I will say part of the pleasure of doing from my point of view, being producer is mixing all the sound and putting people's voices on different tracks. Although it can take a lot of time.
Yeah.
But our listeners aren't too worried about hearing about that. Look, congratulations on your good work with Skeptics with a K. It's certainly one of the premier skeptical podcasts around the world, and I'm so pleased when shows like Skeptics with a K have longevity.
Yeah, no, it's been going a good while, and that's a real testament to Mike and Marsh, my co-hosts. They really do put so much work into it that I'm very lucky to be part of it.
Absolutely, yeah, they're great fellas. I know them both very well. I can't remember off the top of my head. Did we meet at QED?
I think we might have done, yes, but I think everything was incredibly busy, and as it always is at conventions. So I think it was a brief hello rather than anything more than that.
You're probably right. But anyway, we shall certainly make up for any lack of social niceties soon. Coming up, you'll be flying to Australia to take part in Skepticon. Now, your background...
Very soon.
Very soon, yeah. Your background is in biology, isn't it?
Yes, yeah. So I finished a PhD in cancer research just over a year ago, a little over a year ago. So I've been doing kind of hardcore bench science for actually close to 6 years now.
Wow.
Throughout the duration of my PhD, and then in my subsequent work postdocing. So very science heavy.
Yeah, really. And this would give you an interesting insight, especially from a skeptical angle. You must have come across in your travels very disturbing examples of cancer quackery.
Absolutely, yeah, and much more through my work with the Merseyside Skeptics Society, that kind of finding pseudoscience, advocates of pseudoscience who are pitching cancer treatments to general members of the population. I fairly recently attended a talk, which I will talk about at Skepticon, a proponent of Gerson therapy and the recommendations that this guy who runs a clinic over in Mexico would make to patients, many patients in his audience who, are suffering from, battling with cancer and not getting the advice they need from doctors, because often being pushed into the kind of alternative medicine route. And yeah, it's very, very distressing to hear that strong advocacy of things that have no evidence behind them, especially when on a science level, I see how complicated cancer is, but how understanding that complexity is the important part of understanding how we can treat it, rather than telling patients that you can cure it all with diet.
Well, exactly. And I think it's interesting that a lot of the people, and I've never been able to really put my finger on the number here, but a lot of people involved in the natural world, the natural alternative medicine, are true believers. And you get the residual who are the scammy con men and con women out there. And the true believers can be so sincere because they are sincere.
Yeah, they genuinely believe that they're helping people and that they have the answer. And unfortunately, the science doesn't back that up. And it is a dangerous game to be, as you say, that sincerity really sells it to people, and that can be very, very dangerous.
Yeah, and coupled with that is the belief among certain percentage of the population that medical science knows the cure for cancer, but they just simply withhold it to keep people sick, to keep selling their drugs.
to make money. That's one of the more frustrating things that I encounter being involved in skepticism and being very interested in cancer research, because, I have worked with a lot of different people who are research associates at universities associated with academia, with professors who are running labs within academia, and I've also worked with some smaller pharmaceutical companies. And I can tell you now, you don't do this for the money. It is
Right.
Research is very much you're doing it because you want to progress things in research. If you're researching in academia and basic research, and for many of the researchers working in pharmaceutical companies, it's all about finding answers and making a difference to our understanding of cancer.
Yeah, and it's a slow process, and
absolutely.
Again, a lot of the people who need answers, it's very hard for them to accept that. We've only progressed so far, which I think, though, when you look at it, we've progressed a long way. But of course,
we've done an incredible job. Yeah.
We can't cure these things overnight just yet.
Exactly, and that's kind of exactly what I will talk about at Skepticon, is that this disease is not one disease. It's actually an incredibly complicated set of hundreds of diseases, and it's understanding the biology of how cancer works is fundamental to understanding why we don't have a magic bullet cure yet, why we have to work towards better treatments, increasing lifespan for patients, and just improving the number of years that patients go into remission, because it's not something that happens overnight, but we have made this incredible progress. We've doubled life expectancy in the last 40 years because of all the research that we're doing.
That's a good figure to keep in mind, actually, because, in my lifespan, which is nearly 53 years now, when I remember my first recollections of this, hearing about cancers and stuff like that, the prognosis wasn't so good, but now it's dramatically different. It really is.
Yeah, we really have made such huge progress in prolonging life for patients and improving quality of life, because I think a lot of people forget that, and certainly it helps support proponents of alternative therapies. Obviously, treating cancer gives nasty side effects, but there are an awful lot of researchers who are trying to find ways to improve quality of life for patients who are on chemotherapy or different types of treatment, to not just prolong life, but also make that life more comfortable. Yeah,
absolutely right. So, the message I suppose you'll be giving, and the general message, is that things are getting better. We can't make them better quick enough for some people, obviously, which is just the way things are. But medical science is progressing as best it can.
Absolutely, yeah. We're making huge strides and working incredibly hard to do it. Certainly the academic researchers and the industry researchers that I've worked are working many, many, many more hours than most people would imagine. It's not a job that lends itself to a lot of free time, but people do it for the love of the science, and they really push and work as hard as they can.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And it also, again, it irks us when there's this belief out there that people like you, hardworking people really interested in getting to the answers, are somehow part of the evil world conspiracy, and you're just keeping the answers from everybody. It's quite sad, really. Yeah,
absolutely.
Well, look, we're looking forward to hearing all about that and much more when you come to Skepticon, and not far away now, folks. And we'll also, I'm sure you'll also be regaling us of your stories of your adventures with the Merseyside Skeptics Society too.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, that's fantastic. I can't wait to meet you again. I'm sure we'll have a lot of fun here in Sydney.
Yes.
And, of course, I can't wait to see your talk when you give it live from the stage. Folks, there's yet another clue for you, another hint to quickly run to the website. Links in this week's show notes, and get your tickets to see Dr. Alice Howarth in person. Well, Alice, thank you once again, and we'll see you very soon in Sydney.
Thank you very much. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Hey, Max Fun listeners. Have you been listening to Max Fun for a while and you've just been wondering, where's the new Flat Earth podcast I keep hearing about?
Well, here it is. We give you all the facts on NASA's lies and how we know that the Earth is actually flat. Just kidding. This is Oh No, Ross and Carrie, and we join fringe religious groups. We undergo alternative medical treatments.
And we hang out with people like 9/11 truthers, flat earthers. We find out, why do people believe strange things?
We join them, and we tell you all about it. We have a lot of fun. We make a lot of friends.
Yeah, we do. We joined the Mormons. We joined the Scientologists. We got acupunctured. We got fire cupped. We got ear kindled. We've done it all, and we're going to keep doing it all. Why don't you check out Oh No, Ross and Carrie at MaximumFun.org.
A couple of weeks ago, I was walking through Sydney looking for some microphone filters. They call them popping filters or wind screens or wind shields. It stops the p sound when you're... anyway, that's by the by. I was heading for a music shop that sells them, and just before I got to the music shop, I passed a massage parlour. And massage parlours are common in Sydney. They're usually Thai massage parlours. And yes, it's quite nice and relaxing from time to time. In the window of this particular one, however, was one of these detox foot baths, or a page about it, with a photograph of someone sticking their feet into a detox bath, and then progressively photographs of the water turning dark and murky. And on the page, stuck to the window, was a little chart that says colour or particulate, and colour is spelt the American way. That's interesting. And next to it, material or area of the body being detoxified. So, according to this little chart, if the water turns black, it's detoxifying from your liver. Black flecks, heavy metals. Brown, detoxifying from the liver, cellular debris, tobacco. Dark green, detoxifying from gallbladder. Orange, detoxifying from joints. Red flecks, blood clot material. Yeah, I'd be pretty worried if there was blood clot material coming out through the soles of my feet. White cheese-like particulates. Most likely yeast. Most likely yeast. White foam. Sounds dire. Detoxifying from the lymphatic system. Yellow-green. Detoxifying from the kidneys, bladder, urinary tract, female/prostate area. Wow, you can't get much more scientific than this. Well, of course, there are many pages on the internet that explode or debunk this quack device. And here's one at Device Watch, which is from the Quack Watch website. Device Watch, your guide to questionable medical devices. The Aqua Detox scam by Stephen Barrett, MD. And if you remember, we interviewed Stephen Barrett a couple of weeks ago on the Skeptic Zone. And the page says, one way to scam people is to diagnose and correct a non-existent problem. Aqua Detox practitioners do this by claiming to remove toxins and balance cellular energy. During treatment sessions, the customer's feet are bathed for 30 minutes in salt water that is subject to low-voltage current transmitted through an electrode assembly called an array, the dark cylindrical object to which the wire is attached. Aqua Detox International claims that the apparatus, quote, produces a frequency of positive and negative ions which gently resonates through the body and stimulates all the cells within it, rebalancing the cellular energy, enabling the cells to perform efficiently and release any toxins that may have built up, end quote. During the process, the water typically turns reddish-brown. Some marketers refer to the process as, quote, ionic cleansing, end quote, or an, quote, ionic foot bath, end quote. Another marketer, Mobile Beauty, further explains that, quote, the system draws toxins through the soles of the feet, end quote, and that the, quote, water changes colour due to the release of toxic substances through the 2,000 pores of the soles of the feet, end quote. Its treatment sessions typically cost £15 to £30. The company's website states that, quote, "You'll see the excreted toxins in the water. The water will change colour and consistency from orange, brown through black," end quote. Yellow is said to come from the kidneys and the bladder, orange-brown from the joints, green, dark brown to black from the liver, gallbladder and or bowel, and white foam from the lymphatic system. Grease or fat particles may float to the top of the water. According to the company, the process can be used to improve liver and kidney functions, circulation, general metabolism, arthritis and joint pains, headaches, fatigues, irritability, menstrual pain, skin problems, mercury and heavy metal toxicity, food allergies, and poor digestion. The above claims are nonsensical. Most of the listed conditions do not have a toxic basis. Positive and negative ions cannot, quote, "resonate," end quote, through the body in response to any such device. And the skin has no ability to excrete toxins. Real detoxification of foreign substances takes place in the liver, which modifies their chemical structure so they can be excreted by the kidneys, which filter them from the blood into the urine. The Aqua Detox is said to have been developed by, quote, "Dr." end quote, Mary Staggs, based on, quote, "research," end quote, by Royal Rife. Staggs, who is British, obtained 2 naturopathy degrees from a non-accredited American correspondence school and appears to do most of her work in Spain. Rife was an American inventor who, during the 1920s, claimed to have developed a powerful microscope that could detect living microbes by the colour of auras emitted by their vibratory rates. A survey by the science journalist Ray Gervin has identified at least 19 devices that are similar to the Aqua Detox. Most of the devices sell for about £1,000. Many skeptics suspect that the colour change produced by the Aqua Detox was caused by rust, ionised iron, rather than toxins. Ben Goldacre, who writes the Bad Science column for Guardian Unlimited, an online British newspaper, investigated by using a car battery to send a current through 2 metal nails that he placed into a bowl of salt water. The water turned brown and developed some sludge on top. Then he sent a colleague to get, quote, "detoxed," end quote, and collected before and after water samples. Laboratory testing showed that in both cases the change in the water colour was due to the greatly increased iron content. Thus it appears that A. the colour change is due mainly to the precipitation of rust created by corrosion of the electrodes, and B. the water would change colour regardless of whether or not a foot was placed in it. The Guardian Unlimited article has had some impact on how the Aqua Detox and its imitators are marketed. Some marketers admit that the colours are due entirely to electrode conversion, and there is less emphasis on toxin removal and more emphasis on balancing of energy that is not measurable with scientific instruments and therefore untestable. But the bottom line is very simple. All such devices should be considered medically worthless. And believe it or not, this article dates from December 2004. I'll link to this on the show notes, but there's really no need to update this article because it's still current. These devices are still being marketed around the world. People are still forking out real money to bathe their feet and have the water change colour. A detox foot bath.
Hey, fellow skeptics.
Ben Radford here,
With Celestia Ward,
your friendly host of Squaring the Strange.
a podcast that looks at topics ranging from legends and cryptids and panics,
To 80 myths, psychology, and folklore.
breaking things down and picking things apart.
As we skeptics do.
We bring different perspectives to the table.
Celestia, for example, is a witty cartoonist.
And Ben is a brilliant writer and longtime skeptical investigator.
We don't always agree.
But we have fun trying.
And we learn new things.
Join us for new topics every week or two.
Or browse our backlog of evergreen episodes.
Available on iTunes and all your podcast feeding troughs.
Squaring the Strange.
Take care, strangers.
Here's Maynard's spooky action at a distance.
Well, here we are in a tin can high atop the world. Well, no, we're not actually. We're at the second story of the Occidental Hotel for Skeptics in the pub, where I walked in, and let me tell you, some Diana Ross was playing downstairs. I'm coming up, great track. Walk up here, nothing. Not a cracker, not even a Walk in the Black Forest by Herb Albert, which is a great track. I recommend it to you. Tonight we're going to be hanging out with some skeptics, seeing what's going on, who's shaking what and what they're shaking it at, what's critical, what's not, and what's thinking and what's not. I'll be on the side of the what's not thinking, and you can decide the debate by a round of applause at the end and a simple standing and walking out. That's what's happening tonight here at Skeptics in the Pub. Well, look, I have asking people tonight about the letter that's just been sent out by the Australian Skeptics to RSLs to consider about maybe not having psychics there doing shows about talking to the dead, considering the memory of the dead could be important for the Returned League Association. How do you feel about that as an American?
As an American who has no voting rights here, that sounds disrespectful and counterproductive. They'd be better off hiring therapists. Would
there be a similar thing going on in the US at a return service club there? Would they have shows on like that?
Not that I'm aware of. I'm actually rather ignorant as to what the Veterans Association does. I know they're supposed to provide things like healthcare and mental health care, but, you know, with the backlog, that's not really happening, unfortunately.
Yeah, and people with psychic abilities isn't probably something you want to be supplying.
Hopefully not, no. They should be supplying real healthcare.
Okay. Oh, yes. So should they be having psychic shows at RSLs when you think about it? Yeah.
No, not at all. They most definitely should not be spending any money on it.
Yeah, I mean, it probably actually makes money for them when you think about it, which is probably the reason why they're doing it. So you've got to take that into account, I guess.
Of course, money's always the root of all of their ideas, I suppose.
Well, particularly with a lot of RSLs in New South Wales, their business model is based upon gambling. They've got a lot of poker machines in there.
They don't need anything extra. Those poker machines make them quite a lot of money.
I'm sure they do. Have you got an opinion on this at all, sir?
Well, I'm not really for that idea at all. Yeah, I think we should be honouring the servicemen and women, but it's a disgrace, I think, to do what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, do you think it's a skeptic's place to point it out to them? But I guess it doesn't hurt to write them letters saying, have you thought about this?
Yeah, I think we should inform all the time. Yeah. Actually, I've been to a lot of shows where they have like the mentalists, but they're there to entertain. We know it's a game. We know it's
someone like Banachek who goes, look, it looks like I'm reading a mind, but I'm not really doing that. Yeah, someone who's upfront about it. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, we know it's for entertainment. We know it's for fun. We wonder how they do it. We don't know how they do it, but we know it's a gag. It's a trick behind it. But we don't want to have these people fooled by people coming to the RSL and thinking they're really connecting with the dead. Yeah.
Well, yes, because you can also pollute someone's memory by doing that as well. You can give them the false impression that something's going on in the past that never happened at all. Yeah. Yes. Yes. Well, look, Trish, how do you feel about this whole thing of psychics at RSLs talking to the dead, or more correctly, having the dead talk back to them?
I think it's very distasteful to have such grief vampires coming along to places where people should be looked after. You know, they may be quite vulnerable. They might need, looking after rather than being extorted.
Yeah, as I mentioned, it could pollute the memory of the dead, so you're actually changing the person's memory of the dead by intimating that there's this information from them which probably isn't true.
Yeah, exactly. And the problem is as well, like if they're talking about maybe people who died in combat, there's a lot that they can say that will be probably like Barnum statements, they were very courageous, but there's things that you can say that you're going to be onto a winner. So the problem with that is, and that obviously they're more likely to be believed, which is just really wrong.
Are you a little bit more sceptical because of your English experience? Because there's a bit of a longer history with this thing in the UK as entertainment?
I don't know if it's that, but I have...
We do have plenty in Australia, but you get the big English ones coming here really slamming it so often, yeah.
I have personally protested some of the bigger names, which I probably won't name because they are quite litigious, but I have definitely protested and helped hand out leaflets outside saying, keep an eye out for these Barnum statements which are likely to be coming out, during the show.
Have you gone into their shows and seen cold reading in action?
I've never actually paid money for one because I just find that, for start, I've never had the money. I've gone along to a couple of free ones before, and in all honesty, it's hard not to laugh.
Right, okay.
And then, of course, you're seen as being the evil person at the back who's laughing all the way through it. And I'm like, no, but I'm laughing because she's claiming to be talking to your dead chihuahua.
Right. Oh, really? Oh, right. Yeah. Whose grasp of English might not have been that good in the first place when it was alive.
Well, exactly. I mean, I think maybe if she'd done it with a Spanish accent, that could have been funnier.
Well, and if it didn't know not to poo in the corner, how is it talking from the afterlife?
Exactly.
Exactly.
Instead chewing up your slippers in the corner of the room. Like, come on.
Look, we've had a bit of a chat here. We've got a couple of new people that are along here for the first time, and they're also just new listeners to the Skeptic Zone as well. Who have we got here?
My name is Michelle Demers. My name's Heather.
And how did you find your way to the Skeptic Zone? I mean, there's plenty of other great podcasts to listen to. I mean, George Harab's show is much better. So why are you listening to us?
Well, I'm a big fan of other skeptic podcasts as well. And sometimes, when you like one and you really enjoy it, you end up looking and seeing what else is on there. And your show came up.
So what skeptic podcast did you start with?
Skeptic's Guide to the Universe. Same thing.
And how did you discover that one?
I discovered it from Heather's recommendation, actually.
Oh, so it's all your fault.
I found it on Spotify, which I'm addicted to, and I've been addicted to it ever since.
Oh, okay. That's good, because the Americans can get their podcasts onto Spotify. The Australians can't at the moment. Oh, really? Yes, it's a bit centric to that, yeah. Well, that's good. And what do you make of our little tonight? We had a discussion about some Australian Indigenous history there.
Yeah, that was actually fascinating. I mean, we're both from Canada originally, so that's not something that we've really come across before. And it's interesting hearing different perspectives on similar issues, because they always bring up things that you never really thought about, and it always gives you something new to consider.
Yeah, and how is the First Nation history treatment going up there in Canada?
Probably not much better than here. Overall.
Okay. Now, many more Americans turned up there with the whole Trump thing. Are people just flooding across the border there going, I want to live here? Because your Prime Minister's so much nicer. Although he had that touching incident, but he apologised 8 times for it, or within a day, which is good form.
Well, actually, what's really interesting now is Canada's not a place you get a lot of illegal refugees. It's hard because you've got a big ocean on either side, and then you've got a big country underneath it. But now we're actually hearing about illegal refugees because they're refugees in the U.S. and they're trying to flee the U.S. So they're crossing the borders over to Canada. It's that hasn't really happened a lot in our past, as far as I know.
Wow. Well, we live in interesting times, don't we? As the Chinese might say.
Yeah, indeed.
And look, one last question before we finish. Thank you for listening to the show. That's 2 more listeners. Write that down in the book, Richard. What is the main thing you're sceptical about? When one skeptical topic comes up on any of your podcasts, what do you go, oh, great, that's good? Anyone you like particularly more than another?
Well, I think because I'm a plant scientist and I work with plant genetics a lot, so the yes.
That's another botanist. That's 4. No, a lot of botanists we've spoken to, 4 or 5 in the past couple of weeks. Normally it's physicists, getting doing the faster than light rubbish and stuff like that. But botanists are cool. Favourite plant?
My favourite plant, Adenium obesum. It's called the desert rose. It's mostly I just like it because it's beautiful. I'm just going to be frank about that. Wow. But they grow like bonsai. They have this really beautiful base and they have these gorgeous flowers, and they grow like bonsai, but you don't actually have to trim them. So they're like zero work bonsai, which is amazing.
Wow. Will we have anything like that in Australia that you've seen?
Oh, all over the place. Yeah, they're like common potted plants. You find them in people's gardens.
Yeah, well, I was thinking it was some rare thing we'd have to order in a shop, and that's great.
Well, in Canada they absolutely are, but here you actually have the climate for it. So here we think back home we think they're totally exotic, but here it's like everyone's got them in their front yard, no big deal.
Oh, okay. As I've said it before on the show, I'm a fan of the Western Australian pitcher plant. It's a carnivorous plant, very difficult to grow because it lives in swampy marsh regions and like acidic soil. So unless you are tending it daily like a tropical tank of fish, it'll die, which I've killed 3 of them, so I don't do anymore. And what's your area of science you're interested in?
Well, it'd have to be environmental science. I'm actually studying sustainability, so not the scientific side of things, but just how people can live more sustainably within the earth, the world, because as you can imagine,
with 7+ billion people, there's a lot of things we need to work out how to do better so we can, get the long haul in.
Okay, so you've just look, the Russians have just filled the Canadian election and made you president of the world, okay? Thank you, Russians. Now, what's the first thing you would do as that to environmentally save the place? The first thing on the list.
I don't really know yet. I'm still learning.
Oh, okay.
I'm still learning, and I'm happy to say I'm still learning. Look, there are lots and lots of little things, but I really do think one thing I can say with some confidence at this point is that government does have to lead the way, and it's definitely not in this country, not really anywhere.
Okay. Look, how's Canada going with deregulation? It's not moving in that way like the US is it?
Not.
Because it's kind of cheaper. People think it's saving money by doing that, but no.
Luckily, well, now we've got I don't think Trudeau is into too much deregulation. That would be one good thing about him. He's not very environmentally friendly, but, there's obviously so many varying factions that want what they want, so you can only do so much. I really don't know what they're doing economically at the moment. I know Conservatives are complaining about him economically, so that must mean that he is regulating things.
Well, look, thank you both for listening to the show, and I must congratulate Canada on having the only defence minister that's come out publicly and admitted to the existence of UFOs. He's about 96 now. He was your defence minister during the 60s, and he says, yep, they're real. I saw the stuff. So good on. He saw the stuff, and in fact, he's been telling people so long he's gone off that now and going to do something else because people won't listen to him.
Well, I'm going to say poly means many, and ticks are little blood-sucking creatures.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Right. Okay. Thank you. Well, Richard, it's been happening in Skeptics in the Pub tonight. There's a hubbub in the background, and there's a bit of a wash-up, and it's been a bit of arm wrestling. It's been fun.
It's time I went and washed up. In fact, I think I am washed up, Maynard. That's the problem.
There's been hushing, flushing, and some occasional fussing, but it's all been fun.
It's all been fun at Skeptics in the Pub, and I hope we see a big crowd here next month, the first Thursday of the month.
Right, cool. And don't forget the conference, people. Get your tickets to that because it's going to be a big time, and it's the one time of the year I really dress up.
Yes, that's right. The one time he dresses. Put some clothes on.
You told me that aliens really exist. You met them and swooned.
Sziasztok!
Всем привет!
Hejsa allihop! Guys, I just had the most amazing experience.
What experience, Andras?
Andras, have you been to the pub? I told you not to hang out with Marsh. You know he was blessed by Peter Popov.
No, Yelena, I'm not talking about psychics. It was a real ESP experience.
You have been to the pub. Either that or you've been smoking something.
No, Pontus. The ESP is the European Skeptics podcast. It's the most amazing thing. You get to know so much about skeptics and their activities across Europe. Events, hot topics, and interviews with lots of interesting people.
Oh wow, cool. By the way, Pontus, you just committed the false dichotomy fallacy.
I guess that means I'm really wrong.
Yep. And you can even learn about those fallacies on the show and hear about people spreading silly ideas. You should really check it out. It's the ESP, the European Skeptics Podcast. It's on every week.
Alright, so where can I get this ESP experience? It sounds good.
You can go online at theesp.eu, follow it on Twitter at espodcast_EU, or like the podcast on Facebook. Oh, and you can also contact the show by sending them an email to info@theesp.eu. And if you want to subscribe, do a quick search for the European Skeptic Podcast on SoundCloud, iTunes, or Stitcher.
I don't know how you can believe.
And joining me now, all the way from Prague, it's Claire Klingenberg. Once again, hello, Claire.
Hi, nice to be back.
Yeah, wonderful to have you back on the Skeptic Zone. Now, the last time we spoke to you a few weeks ago, you were telling us about your upcoming trip to Scotland and Germany. First of all, how was Scotland? How did that go?
It was awesome. The Edinburgh Skeptics are doing a great job at the Fringe. They had a talk every night for 20 days straight. It was really, really something. And in Glasgow, it was fantastic too. The Glasgow Skeptics, they have talks every Monday, and they're incredibly prepared and friendly, and it was a wonderful trip all around.
It sounds like you've had a great time, and I'm jealous of your trip to Scotland, but probably and maybe possibly even more so jealous about your trip to Germany because, and folks, I will link to this on the show notes, you were involved in some testing of some paranormal activity, which was all recorded by a Deutsche Welle or some German TV network. What can you tell us about that?
Well, Martin Maynard from the GWP, the German Skeptics, invited us to come over and see their testing because the German Skeptics do their testing only once a year, always in the summer, in August. And so it was really exciting for us to go to see how they do their paranormal challenges, their paranormal experiments. They had two candidates this year. The first one was a dowser, and the second one was an engineer who thought he could detect a new type of electromagnetic field that was generated by the universe or by some higher power. Yeah. So that was a kind of an unclear thing. He worked his whole life as a antenna engineer, and he tried to apply that knowledge to creating a special pendulum that could measure this electromagnetic field.
Yes, it was fascinating to watch the video, and I encourage everybody, even though the video is in German, you don't need to understand German to see what's going on. It's a scientific test. Claire Klingenberg is there taking part, and lots of other people. We've got a dowser, a water diviner looking for water, and this man with his pendulum, and it's just so classic, isn't it, Claire? The dowser and somebody with a pendulum. It's like the good old days of skepticism, isn't it?
That's true. It's always interesting to see these tests, how different people react to, unfortunately, always having their beliefs squashed in a way. The dowser, he was a construction worker who uses his dowsing rods to find cables. Mm-hmm. And but for some reason, for the test, he wanted to find water. And then he said that if it was cables, he could have found them, but he didn't say that ahead of time. So, and he kind of turned around and left, and it wasn't a big deal. But the second guy, because he wrote already 2 books about his method, and he was very much invested into it, he didn't believe that he could be wrong. And his son-in-law was there with him as well, and both of them said that if they would have done it at home at the forest where they lived, it would have worked out. But because of the strange conditions that were there, they couldn't. Even though that they came in there a day earlier to set everything up and measure everything before the experiment the next day, and they had a chance to redo everything according to their wishes. So, but it's always like that.
Well, you're absolutely right. And watching it, I was almost anticipating, waiting for the excuses or the rationale to come through. And this is always the case. I mean, I've done various tests of water diviners over the years, and we wait for this to happen. I think the famous one is James Randi, where he did the test in Australia, and out came all the excuses. But it's a part of psychology we know about. When people fail at something they know they can do, then they look for a reason as to why they failed.
You can see it on the video, but what was an interesting moment when the results were being revealed with the second gentleman. So they always did the test in sets of 10s. So we... Dr. Wolf, who was the head of the experiment, he was revealing the first 10, second 10 results, and they were like 80%, 70% successful. So that was interesting for us to see, like, oh my God, this actually could, work out. But the gentleman said, this result is bad because I didn't, feel it that way or something like that. And then we got to the other results, and then the real magic came into play, which is, for me, statistics. And it all evened itself out, and it was 50-50 in the end. Yeah.
Yeah, well, again, folks, I'll link to this video in the show notes, and I urge you to watch it, even though it's in German. It doesn't matter. You'll see the scientific process in action. You'll see the randomization, and you'll see Claire Klingenberg on German TV.
Yes.
What fun. Well, congratulations, Claire. I'm so pleased that you were able to take part in that. I know for any skeptic, it's always an interesting, a deeply fascinating thing to do, to take part in a test of paranormal power.
Exactly. And now in the Czech Republic, we are currently going through the process of finally getting the bunker. So for our testing, we went to visit it, and it looks really, really cool. And it has a lot of room for testing, and we hope to test people not only from the Czech Republic but from other countries as well. So give us a shout out if you want to use our bunker.
And if you ever need an international consultant who's done a few tests, just let me know.
Of course.
Well, that's just wonderful. Well, Claire Klingenberg, once again from the Czech Republic, thank you very much for that update.
All right, bye.
Hi, g'day. I'm Dr. Carl, and I'm honoured to be speaking at Skepticon Australia 2018. And first, were the hippies right when they said that reality is only for people who can't handle drugs? Well, we're going to explore that. So what is the real colour of the universe? Do people use only 10% of their brain? Do the 7 deadly sins actually still exist? Do diet drinks get you drunker? How can you tell quickly if a list of numbers is faked? And are we living in the best or the worst of times? And what generates more power on a weight per weight and volume for volume basis? The sun or your compost pile? And worst of all, I'll tell you the real truth about Santa.
Meet Dr. Carl Kruszelnicki at Skepticon 2018, the Australian Skeptics National Convention, October the 13th and 14th at the Concourse, Chatswood. Tickets available at convention.skeptics.com.au. On Saturday the 8th of September, a small but happy band of Australian skeptics headed for the Town Hall Blood Donation Centre, interested in doing our bit for the general health of the community. On hand was Maynard.
Look, as Adam West once said to Burt Ward in that great Batman movie Cabaret, life is a cabaret, old chum. And indeed, Sydney is not really a place you should get up before 12 o'clock on a Saturday morning, really. I've had a hell of a day. There's no people running around with their children taking them to sport. But here's some people doing a community-minded thing that's actually going to help people instead of whinging about like I am on a Saturday morning. We've got the skeptics here in the foyer of the blood bank about to give some blood. We've got the usual people. We've got, hi, Ran, how are you?
I'm very good, thank you.
Have another blood giver. Hello.
Hi.
Richard?
I'm halfway through filling out page 6 of volume 3 of the questionnaire.
I know you well, and I'm not quite sure you've done 3 of those things, but anyway, over to Alethea. Have you filled out the form you had to fill out?
I'm not eligible to donate blood in Australia.
Why was that? What you said the wrong thing to Mr. Dutton?
I'm classified as a mad cow.
Really? Because you've been in a place where there could be prions or something.
As people who've lived in the UK during a certain period of time are not permitted to donate in Australia.
Really?
Yeah,
wow.
Mad cow disease.
Yes, I know. And they can't test for it. Is that the problem?
Or they won't test for it. But either way, I'm also underweight for the.
Wow. So there's 2 reasons you can't do it.
You have double reasons.
Well, my reason's just crap because I'm really scared and don't like needles and stuff and that. And I would just I can't even look behind me.
Well,
and that's just the foyer.
Report. You're here to report for the Skeptic Zone, and I baked cookies for our generous donors.
Oh, good, okay. Well, now what sort did you make?
Parmesan sables and spiced ginger cookies.
Okay. Well, that seemed to be going pretty well there. And how are you going with the questionnaire, Richard? Anything that might make you ineligible?
I hope not. I'm going through everything. It's asking me where I've been, what I've been eating, blah, blah, blah. I hope
you've been eating. Well, I can tell them that 5 bean mix from Aldi.
Yeah, that's right. It says here that make sure I've been drinking lots of water, which I have been all morning. I'm glad they've got bathrooms here, I can tell you that much.
Okay. But are there many people around here this morning? I just want to look towards where the blood will be taken, even roughly, but we haven't.
Well, there's some people downstairs we can see. I don't know if there's... No, that's a food court. No, I got that wrong. No, not too many people here, but we're here early.
Well, I'll see what Jessica's up to over here. Jessica, I believe you're going to be giving some blood here this morning. How are you going with the rather extensive questionnaire?
Oh, it's extremely extensive. And
what's an example of one of these strange questions that people might not expect would be on there? Anything odd?
Well, it's interesting what they're looking for. So they're asking you if you've had in the last 12 months an illness with both a rash and swollen glands with or without a fever. So obviously they're trying to pin down whether you might have had some sort of illness that they might be concerned about.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Wow, all sorts of questions there. And they're concerned about mad cow disease.
Oh, yes.
They want to know if you've been to a dentist in the last week, because we all know hanging around with dentists is not a good idea at the best of times.
Oh, too right.
Okay.
I stay away as often as possible.
Good luck that. Do you think you're going to pass? Because often there's a simple test and you hadn't thought about it and they go, oh, you answer yes or no, and then that's it.
Yeah, well, there's stuff here I've never even heard of. I mean, what's Chagas disease? That's under the question, have you ever had malaria, Ross River fever, Q fever, leptocirrhosis or Chagas disease?
Well, I imagine it's related to that, but, well, good luck with that. I hope you've got your GP on a speed dial there.
On speed dial, yes.
Well, and how did you go around? Were any of the questions tough for you?
Yes. The one about sex.
Right.
And all that. No.
Well, it is fairly, it's like, let me think.
Yeah, well, because
it goes back for ages.
Basically, it's pretty much ever.
Yeah.
Have you ever had? Some of the questions, I must admit, I find I'm a regular blood donor. I didn't donate today. I donated a couple of days ago, and it was my 38th donation in Australia. I still find the ones that ask about male-to-male sex offensive. I find that the discrimination against gay men in blood donation is unwarranted. The evidence is very much against it. So maybe that's a campaign that we should engage in one day.
And that's a hangover from the 90s when they first introduced that question. They just kind of left it in.
Well, they're trying to reduce the potential risk to blood recipients, which is completely understandable, except that the risk to blood recipients today from gay men is essentially zero. The increased risk is tiny, and blood is tested anyway. So it's unwarranted. It's just discrimination. Yeah, so I do find that difficult, not for myself to answer, but from an emotional and logical perspective, it's just unwarranted. Yes.
Yeah. And how do you prepare yourself for your blood donation, since you give it so regularly? How do you prepare? You drink lots of water, or the day before do you eat a special way?
I just normal. I make sure, usually I just eat something. I usually don't eat in the morning, but if I give blood, then I do eat in the morning. I drink a little bit. I don't have any effects from blood donation, so for me it's quite easy.
Cool.
But it's a great thing to do in the blood. The Red Cross Blood Bank started doing this thing in the last few years where they let you know what's been done with your blood in very general terms. So you get a text message a few days later saying something like, your blood has just saved a life at John Hunter Hospital in Newcastle, or something like that. It's great. It gives you a great feeling that you're doing the right thing.
Well, it's about an hour later. It's Cub reporter Richard Saunders here, filling in for Maynard. We've repaired to a local hotel to have a glass of water because we're not allowed to drink alcohol.
Or so they tell us.
Jessica Singer is skeptical about that.
And we did the routine. We had our interviews, lots of paperwork, and then we went through Jessica, and you and I were sort of opposite each other, making faces while we were having our blood drawn. Well, I've got my arm bandaged up, so have you. We're wearing little stickers. I'll take mine off, it says. And a big sticker, it says, my first blood donation, which isn't strictly true, because I used to give blood, but many, many years ago. But it was a good day and a good example, I think, Alethea.
Yeah, definitely encourage the rest of the skeptical community to get out there when they have time, make an appointment at their local donor centre and donate under the Australian Skeptics group. But you should tell the listeners about how it felt to go through the whole process, Richard. Did it hurt?
Oh, I sent you a message about that, didn't I, from the chair? Well, they give you a little finger prick in the interview to test the hemoglobin. Yeah. And
your hemoglobin has to be over 120. If it's under 115, it's too low. You don't have enough red blood cells to donate, so it has to be 120. Mine was really good.
So was mine, I'll have you know. And that was fine. And they take
your blood pressure.
And mine was a little high. I don't know why, but there you go.
But you had a migraine last night, so that might account for it.
Could account for it. And then you walk through to a very comfortable chair, one you could easily fall asleep on, the reclining chair, padded. And then, the needle going in hurts a tiny little bit for about 2 seconds. But Jessica, it didn't hurt for you?
Nah.
Oh, all right. Maybe I'm different.
High pain threshold? I don't know.
Well, it's not as if it's a pain I'd run away from. It's just like, ow, and then it was over.
Well, I felt it, but
you wouldn't say it was pain?
Nah.
Oh, okay.
No.
But when I get my vaccinations, that's completely painless. That's just like...
I think that depends on the skill of the person administering the injection.
Ooh.
Nurses tend to be really good because they have heaps of practice. Doctors, maybe not so good. I don't know. Maybe I'm slandering them. I don't know.
I don't know. But honestly, it wasn't bad at all. And then you sit there for about 10 minutes and the blood drains out of your body. You turn white and then you're all... And then when it's all over, they bandage you up. You rest for a minute or two and out to the kitchen, to the cafeteria where you... dive in.
Stuff your face.
Yeah, we had milkshakes, chocolates, cookies. You brought some cookies, Alethea. I had some peanut butter toast, so I did really well.
Oh, I can really recommend Alethea's cookies and her parmesan biscuits. They're just awesome. And the other thing is they recommend that before you donate, you have savoury food. And the reason for this is they want you to eat reasonable amount of salt because that makes you thirsty, so therefore you drink water and therefore you rehydrate.
Yeah, that makes sense. I was drinking all morning. I was glad there was a bathroom there. I think I said that before. Anyway, a good lesson, I think, for skeptics everywhere, Alethea, and thank you for helping putting that together.
Yeah, thank you for donating, Richard and Jessica.
Yeah, and thanks to Alethea for the idea. It was Alethea's inspiration and she organised it.
If you're interested in donating some blood in Australia, visit donateblood.com.au and fill out the forms, make an appointment, and you can donate under the name of Australian Skeptics if you want. Thank you for listening to the Skeptic Zone. Now, if you're in Australia, well, around the world really, and you want to keep up with information, news and events with Australian skeptics, head to skeptics.com.au and sign up for our free newsletter. It's sort of the bite-sized bits of skeptical information you can have between issues of The Skeptic magazine from Australian Skeptics, which comes out 4 times a year. You can get the physical copy, read it on the train or anywhere, or you can sign up and get the electronic copy, which is the PDF of the same thing, or both, if you want. Skeptics.com.au. Thank you to those people who support the Skeptic Zone financially with PayPal or Patreon. And as I said last week, and I got into some trouble, because last week I said the words, hey, Siri, and people were saying that their Siri devices were activated. But I asked Siri last week what the Australian dollar was worth, and let me ask. I'll just ask Siri again, but I'll just edit out the bit of me asking Siri so you'll understand. What's $10 in Australian dollars?
$10 is $13.98.
Okay, a slight variation there from last week, but still, your American dollar goes further here in Australia with the exchange rate. So if you've ever considered contributing or donating to the Skeptic Zone or signing on to Patreon, your dollar goes further. And if I only had a small percentage of listeners only chip in, say, $5 a month with Patreon, it would certainly go a long way at helping me keep the Skeptic Zone going in your ears. That's not an insult. In your ears. You know what I mean. For Sydney listeners, links in the show notes for you to RSVP for the free trivia night coming up on the 12th of October here in Sydney just before the convention. And you can meet people like Dr. Alice Howarth, who we interviewed on this episode. But for this week, this is Richard Saunders signing off from Sydney, Australia. You've been listening to the Skeptic Zone podcast. Please visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for show notes, contacts, and to access the back catalogue of episodes going back to 2008. You can follow the Skeptic Zone podcast on Twitter at Skeptic Zone, visit our Facebook page, or leave a review on iTunes. You can also support the Skeptic Zone via Patreon or PayPal. The Skeptic Zone podcast is an independent production. The views and opinions expressed on the Skeptic Zone are not necessarily those of Australian skeptics or any other skeptical organisation. Hello again to all the people who listen to the show after the music. I know what you want. Yes, you're waiting to play the dice game to test your psychic powers. Yeah, okay. I've got, this week, a 3-sided die and a 10-sided die. Well, 3-sided, I'll roll it 3 times. Let's see. Here we go. So, use your psychic powers. Predict. It's going to be 1, 2, or 3. 1. How'd you go? Let's do it again. Give it a good shake and predict away and 1. Well, it's a 1 in 3 chance, isn't it? Last one. Predict the future. You're not going to believe this. Well, it's 2 this time. 1, 1, 2. Now let's try it with the 10-sided die. Are you ready? It's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, or 10. Predict the future. Fell off the table. Try again. Predict the future. Oh, went onto the computer. 5. 5, but I'll do it 3 times. Here we go. And once more. 6. Last one. Shaking that and 5. The numerologists out there will have a field day with this.